Welcome to Midweek Mysteries, and thank you for being here. I'm your host, Nick Ryan. If you're new to the show, Midweek Mysteries is a shorter version of our full-length episodes that air every Sunday, so be sure to come back and check those out as well. I'd also like to say thank you to our listeners, and of course our supporters on Patreon. As always, we enjoy giving a personal shout-out to our newest patrons at the beginning of our full-length episodes, so if you're a new patron, be sure to tune in on Sunday. Today's first midweek mystery comes to us from James. James says, I work in a grade school as a custodian. After I started doing paranormal investigations, coworkers would occasionally tell me of their personal encounters. One coworker, who I have been working with for 20+ years, fairly recently told me about the old man in a trench coat and hat that would walk out of her classroom when she was a kid. She never told anyone about it all through her childhood, and mentioned it once as an adult, to which her aunt said, "You saw him too?" Aside from that, she never told anyone, except for me. Custodians in different schools within the district would also tell me of their experiences that they've had in their buildings. We strip and wax the floors in the buildings during the summer months because there is less of a chance of someone walking in. One of the custodians in the middle school in our district had waxed the girls' washroom just before closing time after summer school had ended, again, to reduce the chance of someone walking on it and ruining the floor. When he returned the next morning, he came in to find the footprints of what appeared to be a child's bare feet in the middle of the girls' washroom floor. Not walking in, just a pair of footprints in the middle. My building had recently received a new assistant principal who was a former teacher from the middle school. I didn't know her when she was a teacher. She found out that I did paranormal investigations and thought she would share a story with me. Every fall, a lot of the teachers and administration would go on a retreat. This year they rented a bed and breakfast somewhere, and her and 4 others were to share this house for the weekend. When they showed up at the door, this woman, Susan, stopped at the threshold, saying she felt sick and didn't like the feeling of the place for some reason, and one of the others said the same thing, to the point of maybe renting a hotel nearby, but they were talked out of it, and they all went out for dinner. When they returned, Susan once again felt sick to where she had to throw up, and continued to vomit until every bit of fluid was out, and they ended up having to go to the hospital. Coincidentally, her friend had also gotten sick, but not that extreme. When Susan came back to work at the middle school, she started to experience things around her. Voices, things out of the corner of her eye, the elevator door opening for no reason. She was tutoring a developmentally handicapped girl one day during the summer, when the girl had to go to the washroom, and when she returned, she said that there was a little girl in the washroom, bleeding, asking for help. Susan went to the washroom and found no one. When she asked what the little girl looked like, the girl was said to have had on a white dress and bare feet. Our next midweek mystery comes from Stacy. Stacy's story is called Childhood Ghost Friend. Stacy says, I have been listening to your podcast for a while now and have enjoyed it, especially since it makes me feel like I am not alone in the experiences I've had growing up. I guess you can say I'm a bit intuitive. I have been for as long as I can remember, and it took several years for my very Catholic family to come to understand and accept me. Considering this has been a lifelong journey, I figured I would email my stories in as I remember them, or as new ones arise. The first memory I always remember is one that happened when I was in elementary school. I don't remember how old I was, but I remember I was watching Dora the Explorer on TV and eating lunch. My mom had just come back home from the grocery store, and my older brother was helping her unload everything from the car. I was still a little human, so they let me stay in the kitchen while I ate. For some reason, I had this strong urge to look towards the microwave, and not the TV, for a few minutes. I could hear everything around me, but I was just captivated by the microwave. Suddenly, it started to flicker, and I saw this little girl appear. She was in a white dress and had wet hair, and it was almost like a staring contest for a few minutes, until I heard my brother approach the room, and she disappeared. I was so confused on how she just appeared and disappeared in a matter of seconds. After that day, I kept seeing her around my house. I would see her in passing and was terrified. I was too scared to be in a room by myself, and my father would always get mad that I left all the lights on around the house. Things would often go missing, and our friends and family members did not like house-sitting for us while we were on vacation, as they said strange things happened while they were alone. As I grew older and became more vocal about my friend around the house, my mom was afraid that I was mentally ill and had me see several doctors. One concluded that this was not a mental health issue, but a spiritual one, and advised that we consult with a priest. After that, my parents had a priest come to bless our house, and he would come on a weekly basis to hold a mass for our neighborhood. I never saw her after all the blessings. Here is the fun update, though. Years later, while I had a reading from a psychic, I found out that I encountered her spirit while on a family vacation on a resort in Mexico. We reached out to my aunt, who still lived in the area, and she confirmed that a little girl had died from drowning in the pool shortly before we visited. We assumed she probably hitched on to me when we left the resort and went back home. Another fun update. I asked why my parents were so insistent on having the church come into our home for all those blessings, and my mom explained that at the same time of my visits from my ghost friend, she was having some pretty intense nightmares, where a demon was trying to test her faith. In the span of 6 months, she had recurring nightmares. Our home was robbed multiple times, and she lost her job. It was like a whole string of bad luck, and our priest pinpointed it to someone placing a curse or hex on my mom or family. As I was only a kid, my parents did their best to protect me from everything else that was going on around our house. I'll have more on that later. I do have to say that my parents still live in the same house, and we no longer have any issues. For anyone listening who thinks you are stuck living in a nightmare, you are not alone, and it can end. It took a while, but with our regular home blessings, either holy water or sage, everything has been fine. Thanks for listening. Stacy. Our next midweek mystery comes from Tom. Tom says, I have another strange occurrence which I would like to share. It is pretty harmless and nothing sinister, but strange nonetheless. One time about 10 years ago, I was working on a refurb in central London, just off of Oxford Street. I was working on the top floor of an office block that was previously a hotel. The building was old, probably 18th century, and slightly creepy. Nothing that would stop me from getting on with my work. Anyway, the toilets on that floor were complete, and I was in doing some finishing touches. I was putting up mirrors above the sinks and applying silicone to some newly laid tiles. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a shower curtain move, only slightly, but it definitely moved. I brushed it off as wind, or maybe it had been resting at a weird angle and had fallen into a settled position. I tried to ignore it and carry on. Then it happened again. This time, it pulled around on the rail above, holding it, fully round the rail, as though someone yanked it hard. I looked around the curtain to see if it was motorized, or if it had a mechanism that would move it. It didn't. I then made my way out of there and stood on the landing outside the toilets. There was only myself and some carpenters working on that floor, so I walked down the corridor and saw a lad, kneeling, fitting new skirting board, about 50 feet from the toilet entrance. I asked if he had just been in there, knowing that he would have had to be the road runner to make it out and back to his skirting before I left the toilet. He denied being in there, and I explained what had happened, feeling a bit stupid. He laughed and called down the corridor to his mate. They explained to me that I wasn't the first contractor to experience something in the toilet block. They had tools moved and objects thrown when they were working in there. With that, I swiftly finished my work with the door propped open and went home. Thanks again for providing us this platform. All the best, Tom. Our next midweek mystery comes from James. James calls their story Paranormal Experience. James says, Hi, Nick. After listening to your podcast, I've decided to share my experience with you. When I was an only child growing up, I always felt like I wasn't alone. When I finished playing with toys downstairs, I often took them back upstairs and left them at the top of the stair, and I would say out loud, Here, you can play with them now. But I never knew why. My mom at the time was reading tarot cards in the city center, so I was aware of the paranormal, as a lot of things would happen. Stereos turning on in the middle of the night, all the way to ornaments facing the wrong way around. It was when I was about 13-ish, I would get woken up in the middle of the night by someone or something blowing raspberries in my ear One night, I woke up and saw a woman who appeared to be screaming while holding a baby. There was no noise or color apart from the baby's ginger hair. I didn't mention this to anyone. The raspberries kept coming, and my mom decided to get her friend around to see if he could get to the bottom of it. After walking around the house, he said, "There is a spirit of a young boy here who was your friend in a past life, called Stuart. Stuart would walk along the houses, causing mischief." The thing that really struck me with this is he also said that Stuart has ginger hair, something I never told anyone. With that confirmed, I knew the truth. If there was any part of me that didn't believe in the paranormal, I definitely did now. To this day, we still hear from Stuart. When I moved out, I would get texts from my parents saying, "Haha, very funny," and I wouldn't know what they were talking about. They would come home and find stuff all in a pile in one room, or moved out to the stairs, and they thought I was letting myself in to play tricks on them. Thanks for taking the time to read this. James. Our last midweek mystery of tonight comes from Ben. Ben's story is called Possible Dogman Sighting and Strange Lights. Ben says, "Hi Nick, I hope you are well. I have always had an interest in these sorts of things. I actually grew up near Seattle, so I have always been fascinated with Bigfoot mythology. Personally, I'm a believer. Anyway, the reason I'm writing to you tonight is because on the night that I first listened to Paranormal Mysteries, I was driving home from work and saw something very strange. I am a security guard working at a construction site where they are building a solar panel installation. The closest area is near around Borrego Springs, Westmoreland, California, literally in the middle of the desert along a lonely highway. On Saturday, June 27th, at approximately 9:30 p.m., I was driving home from my shift. I was in between Westmoreland and Brawley, California, when I saw some kind of hairy dog-type creature. It was crossing the road from left to right. It was all black with long, shaggy hair. It looked more muscular and larger than a regular dog typically looks. The weirdest part is that it was coming into my headlights from the left, and I could swear it was coming down to all four legs from an upright running position. Once it was completely in my headlights, it quickly crossed the road to the right and disappeared into the bushes. I haven't seen it since. Something else that is weird is a week or so before that, I think it was a Monday maybe, I saw some strange lights that were lined up in the sky over that exact spot. I even posted a comment about it on Facebook, asking if anybody else had seen the lights. We do have a military base nearby, the El Centro NAF. It's where the Blue Angels practice when they are not doing shows. The base is in Sealy, I believe. All of these towns are all within 5 to 15 minutes of each other. We are a rural community. Has anybody else from this area provided you with similar reports? I would be very interested to know. Please let me know what you think about this, or if maybe you can find anything out. I would really like your thoughts. Thanks for the great show. I hope to hear from you. Ben. I reached out to Ben and we shared some thoughts regarding his experience. He also mentioned that this sighting took place on Highway 86 as he was heading southbound at the crossroad of Callan Road on the outskirts of Brawley, California. If any of you have seen or experienced something in or around this area, please contact me. As we come to the end of this edition of Midweek Mysteries, I'd like to say thank you to all of you for tuning in and supporting the podcast. And a special thank you to James, Stacy, Tom, James, and Ben for writing in and sharing their experience with all of us. Until next time, I hope you all have a safe and healthy rest of the week, and we'll see you back here on Sunday for our next full-length episode. If you or someone that you know has witnessed something unexplainable and you'd like to have your story shared on the podcast, please contact me at paranormalmysteriespodcast@gmail.com or visit paranormalmysteriespodcast.com and click on the Tell Your Story link. Please remember, no matter how insignificant or outlandish you believe your experience may seem, I'd like to hear about it. You can also connect with us by joining our forum and by following us on social media. All of our contact information can be found in the show notes. If you'd like to support the podcast, be sure to subscribe to the show and share it with your friends. If you're interested in taking the next step and becoming a patron, you can visit patreon.com/paranormal mysteries. Benefits include ad-free episodes and early access to select shows. New episodes of the Paranormal Mysteries podcast are produced every Sunday, with the new Midweek Mysteries airing every Wednesday, and they're available on all of your favorite podcast apps. From all of us at the Paranormal Mysteries podcast, thank you for listening, and please remember, don't wait for the unknown to come to you. Get out there and find it.